17th day, July 2024. Welcome everybody to the Nuclear Comedy Show, where everything's one great big joke. I'm going to be your host tonight. I'm Dana, and you can call in to these live shows at 709-589-4406. We are in Canada. And we got lots and lots of crazies to get to. Nuclear has the most crazies. I don't know if anybody realizes it. New York Times, TEPCO has worked vigilantly to shut out scrutiny of the ravaged plants. They're talking about the nuclear meltdowns conditions. In 2012, you know, the original pictures released, like these Reactor 4 to your left, Reactor 3 to your right, there wasn't a single person on the entire planet that in the nuclear industry looked at that and said the fuel pools of the reactor cores were still in the building. There simply wasn't anybody on the planet. Was building nuclear power plants and nuclear dumps by the Great Lakes in North America, a quarter of all the fresh water on the planet, meant to poison millions, hundreds of millions, through drinking and through the farms, radioactive food. And when you look at the evidence, that's pretty clear exactly what they done. And it was also to destroy. This is one of the facets of the nuclear industry the world is missing. Is this nuclear industry, its entire legacy, is about destroying the air and particularly the water. They have this contempt for the water, because water is life, I guess. But this is not imaginary. This is easy to quantify. Intelligence agencies pressured researchers to withhold info on the spread of Fukushima radiation. Every country was doing that routine. This whole legacy of nuclear is about stopping the truth from having conversations. We got nothing else to compare this kind of evil to. The dispersal to your left is Neptunium 239 decays to plutonium 239. Is a 20-day model. That's a 20-day model, just 21 days of radioactive fallout. And this is why they pressured researchers. There's all these, just got two more of these, I think it is, from the Time Machine. 12 million yen to censor Twitter, being spent by the city that's burning not just disaster debris, but radioactive debris. It's just about $54,000 US given to Twitter to censor people like me or you who are suggesting there's an issue with that. And Twitter's like, oh yeah, no problem. Keep it rolling. Anybody else you want censored? So this is, why would you burn radioactive debris? If Iran burns it, it's dirty bombs. If a nuclear accident burns it, it's called debris instead of nuclear waste. Japanese government agency is funding projects to monitor online information about Fukushima, and that around-the-clock monitoring of any dissenting voices. So does this sound like an industry that has nothing to hide? Or does this sound like an industry that runs the show? and that has nothing but contempt for facts, and couldn't exist with a bright light shining on him. Seoul could acquire a nuclear submarine if needed to deter North Korea. Oh, UN done what they call a police action after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, where they burnt down every village in the country. And millions dead, millions missing, millions unaccounted for, millions in refugee camps, millions of orphans. Police action, right? You know. They can't use the submarines. And they're not hard to counter, I can tell you that much. They have a base where they put all the submarines into one spot. Pretty smart, right? Just put all the submarines there in case they want to blow everything up to one time. South Korea could introduce its own nuclear submarine. South Korea. What a betrayal they done to North Korea, wasn't it? It's like, North Korea was occupied by Japan for 50 years. And then Nagasaki, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, in that order, happened. And then Japan, of course, had to leave North Korea. And so then United Nations, which used to be called the League of Nations, changed their name to United Nations and said, well, we own the planet and we're going to call the shots, and North Korea can't be free. So now for over 70 years, there's been land, sea, and air embargo. That's after they destroyed everything in that country, every facet of infrastructure, the water. They attacked the civilians, is what they done. Oh, they call it a police action. But when you look at the evidence, clearly that's not what happened. And then you see, like they did in Hollywood shows like, what was it, MASH 4077, to justify the genocide and omnicide against North Korea. And Washington deemed it necessary to counter North Korea threats. No, it was United Nations. I'll show you in a second. He also emphasized the U.S. has no plans to relocate its forces from the Korea Peninsula, South Korea, even if China invades Taiwan, because they don't give a shit about South Korea. They don't give a fuck about Taiwan. They care about China, because China is justification for weapons and military expansion. And 90% of the money is looted through administration. I don't give a shit about China. They care about the ability of secrecy to gobble up the money with no accountability. For the U.S., a nuclear-powered submarine is fundamentally meaningful if it is possessed by a country that will go out into the ocean together to contain China. You can't use the nuclear weapons on China or anybody else because it's a nuclear war. And then nobody can ever cash their checks again. So what's the point of it? They can't keep making profits if they do a nuclear war. The U.S. has always been highly vigilant towards South Korea due to this viewpoint. No, they wanted a launch pad close. They want to be able to spy electronically and every other way on China, because it's a big industry, right? Same as Iran is a big industry for the military. They have 49 bases around Iran for 40-something years. All of them are nuclear, biological, chemical weapon facilities too. These are huge bases, enormous amounts of monetary poured into it every year. 49 bases. Does anybody really think Iran is going to attack America? And this is a former prosecutor, a wimp of a man, if you want to call him a man. He denied Fukushima actually happened. He said there was no Fukushima. There was no meltdowns when he was campaigning. It was just a couple of years ago. So when you're denying a couple of years ago that happened, that makes you a pretty worthless excuse for a human. The U.S. military is a major polluter, but greening the military is a false solution. Is a major polluter. I would imagine they're the biggest polluter, aren't they? Do you know how much fuel it takes to run one of their jets for an hour? You know how much fuel it takes to run their high-altitude nuclear bombers that are in the sky 24 hours a day? They have to be fueled up multiple times in 24 hours. They use enough fuel to run 7 million cars for 24 hours. In the upper atmosphere, where it's very inefficient burning. It's chemtrail on steroids, really.
You need to know about fallout, what it is,
Fallout.
how to
The
detect
so-called
it,
nuclear war, Castle
and
Bravo
what to do
was
to
a
protect
nuclear war.
yourself against it. Everybody
Included
needs to know.
The entire biosphere, the entire ecosystem.
You need to know about fallout.
The military budget in 2020 was 272 times larger than the federal budget for energy efficiency and renewable energy. So imagine if you took just 1 year off from the U.S. military, and look what you could do with it. The money. And not only that, the military wants every precious metal on the planet. This is why they're so desperate to get their hands on North Korea. Let's go back to we burned down every town in North Korea with napalm. So when you do that, you're attacking the children and the women, right? And then you come back home and call yourself heroes. How does that actually work, I wonder? Well, that's United Nations for you, isn't it? 65 years after United Nations burned down every town in North Korea, United Nations is now simultaneously bombing or rocketing 7 different non-nuclear countries. That's 2017. 8th Army Chemical Officer Don Bode is quoted as saying, on an average good day, pilots in the United Nations North Korean genocide dropped 70,000 gallons of napalm, 45,000 from the air forces of different countries, 10 to 20,000 by their navies, 4 to 5,000 by their marines, and the marines nicknamed the burning jelly gasoline cooking oil. Well, if it was done to them, it was called a crime with weird. Well, it was horrible. If you do it to somebody else, it was awesome. Perhaps 2 million Koreans, it wasn't 2 million, it was around 10 million, North and South were killed in the Korean War, all in the name of opposing the rule of force. 4 million casualties, and at least 2 million were civilian. At least 4 to 5 million were civilian. Everybody else, you burnt down their homes with napalm. With napalm. You cowards. You pathetic cowards. After Truman fired General MacArthur in May 1951, the former Supreme Commander testified to Congress that the war in Korea had already almost destroyed a nation of 20 million people. I've never seen such devastation, he said. I have seen, I guess, as much blood and disaster as any living man. And it just curled my stomach the last time I was there after I looked at that wreckage and those thousands of women and children that they cooked with the napalm. I vomited. And the United Nations never lost a second sleep over that. They shouldn't even exist. They can trace 90% of your problems to United Nations and their subsidies. the degenerate, despicable, disgusting, revolting, parasitic World Health Organization, just one of hundreds of their subsidy genocide machines. Kuwait to host the World Robot Olympia 2024, showcasing youth, talent, and technology and innovation. The Deputy Director General of the Youth Sector, the Public Authority for Youth, Public Authority for Youth. So anybody in that country is not free. Emphasized that hosting the World Robot Olympia 2024 in Kuwait, scheduled for next October, to offer a unique platform to showcase the talents of Kuwaiti youth in technology, technical, and scientific field. It's embarrassing to think that anything these people say. Announced the event, which will be held under the theme of Allies of Earth. Allies of the Earth. And so the minute you see these grandiose names, you know you're dealing with sadistic monsters. Speaking of sadistic monsters, I'm going to play this little 40-second clip. I'm just curious, does anybody really think that they're 140 feet above the wreckage to your left? Because that's what they're going to tell you.
Where I was standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4. The whole of this building was blown apart by a huge explosion.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011.
Of the decommissioning work taking place here in Reactor 4.
At the end of our tour, we were checked for radiation exposure. In 4 hours, I received the equivalent of less than a chest X-ray.
1,500 highly radioactive fuel rods inside this pool. They've got to move them outside of this reactor.
Should those people get the death penalty? Should the producers get the death penalty for pretending they're in a building that don't exist, that has contaminated every species on the planet? How does that work, I wonder? U.S. nuclear command satellites need hardening against attacks, a report warns. Department of Defense plans to shift to smaller distributed satellite constellations, which means globs, multiple satellites in groups, in low Earth orbit, creates a new vulnerability that must be addressed, says a new report from the Atlantic Council, which is just a think tank. So why does it get any prominence? Because you're not allowed to have thoughts of your own. It has to come from a think tank, see? The United States should harden its low Earth orbit satellites that support nuclear command and control against radiation effects from potential high altitude nuclear detonation. And there were some incredible phenomenons when they done high altitude nuclear. They call it test, but it's actually a war. The radiation is a war. And this is something that is magic. That's the shell of your planet that's protecting you from space, and they're up there blowing nuclear weapons up. How do you get any stupider than that, really? Like, really, how do you get any stupider than that? Something the entire planet, every species on it is 1,000,000,000% dependent upon. They're up there for years throwing nuclear weapons at it, and the Soviets. What's the point of these? And these people that done it, I mean, you go to the national institutes and museums and everything, and their pictures are on the wall. As if they're somehow good people. There's some bizarre way that you can pretend that these are good people that done this stuff. And their children get the most prestigious jobs, ambassadors and everything else. The Atlantic Council's Scrowcroft Center for Strategy and Security. NC3 comprises the sensors, communication networks, command centers, allow the president to direct nuclear forces. But why do you need to direct nuclear forces? You're never going to use it. Anybody that uses nuclear force, their families, I think, will be immediately set up on by humanity and eradicated. Its space segment includes satellite for missile warnings, secure communication, and nuclear detonations detections. Secure communications. And if you set off a nuclear weapon there right now, you'll kill all the electronics up in that area. High altitude nuclear blast could create widespread electromagnetic pulse event and inject high energy particles into the Earth's radiation belt. Not could, will. They know this, they've done it. Potentially crippling unprotected satellites. And low Earth orbit satellites between 162,000 kilometers altitude are especially at risk due to their proximity. And you notice that belt they talk about, you should look up the videos on high altitude, what they call testing, which is a nuclear war. It's the same weapon, same radioactive fallout. But you should look up, there's a bunch, I think there's like 6 really important ones you'll find. I've watched them, I would imagine 100 times or close to it. And I used to listen to it every night when I was going, just before I go to bed, I would watch one of them. I don't understand. Well, I do understand it. This industry, I actually understand it really well. These are morons. This is an industry of shit for brains. Incredibly educated, but the common sense of a fruit fly. Take us from this nuclear industry perspective on you. So when they had a meltdown, workers were tricked into being on the front lines of Fukushima. They couldn't escape. Think about that statement. You can't escape work. It's not scientists or nuclear academics. You couldn't drag them there with a 1-ton truck. They kept me in a shed, and there's nowhere else to go. Everyone is stuck. You're brainwashed, and after a few days, you're thrown away because of the radiation you were exposed to. The mentally handicapped were working at Fukushima after the meltdowns and given secondhand paper suits. TEPCO said they burned 7,000 paper suits a day. You got any idea how evil this industry is, giving people paper suits at a nuclear meltdown? You didn't want anybody taking the paper suits and doing radiation readings because they would run away and leave the Geiger counter behind. There was over 5,000 workers had brutal internal doses. But Dana, they had a paper suit on, right? I know what you're saying. But the paper suit can't protect you. The nuclear industry wasn't going to tell anybody, were they? And the people that they rolled out, the trick, we got endless videos on these people bragging about what they done. The sadistic shit they actually done. Mentally disabled are working at Fukushima. Homeless are thrown away like disposable people. Mentally disabled working at a nuclear meltdown because nuclear scientists are not going to go there. The military is not going there. The nuclear power plant workers from 50 other nuclear plants in Japan wouldn't go there. Nuclear scientists, nuclear universities, nuclear alumni, nuclear students wouldn't go there. And I used to have a lot of polls asking, should nuclear students have to work at Fukushima before they can graduate from university? And people would actually go in my comment section and say, well, Dana, they're young, Dana. You shouldn't make them work there. What do you think they're going to do when they graduate, you fucking idiot? You really think they're not going to create some other poisons to destroy your children, you fucking dummy? I fucking hate people that are incompetent and incapable of thinking rational about something so significant when I explain it all out and they still can't see the rationale of it. That's the industry. That's not normal people. This is outrageous. This is Forbes, of all people. Forbes is despicably pro-nuclear. The homeless people are being sold to companies and put to work on Fukushima because nobody else is going there. They were paying people $3,000 an hour, the homeless. They can collect their check in about 2 weeks. Unfortunately, they don't live for 2 weeks. $3,000 an hour to go into a wasteland and drop dead. That's why 16,000 people ran away. UN official astounded, well, homeless. The homeless are taken to work in Fukushima ready to die. And the reason they had that connotation is because you've seen all kinds of people drop dead. At the end of the month, they're left with no money. Their take-home was average around $11 a day. That was their pay. And time food got deducted and shelter got deducted. Radioactive food from the nuclear wasteland and living in a radioactive wasteland, surrounded by millions of one-ton bags. This is not an industry. This is the cruelest fucking thing imaginable. When is this world going to wake up? You got to wake up. But we're in trouble. The future of humanity is compromised. And Fukushima was the tipping point. Officials' 311 notebook concerned half of Japan to be covered in nuclear waste. Half! They should be so lucky. Those 60 and older should be prepared to die at Fukushima. Ma, the nuke plant is broke down. We're going to miss you. We're going to have to put you down. 60 and older should be prepared to die at Fukushima, at their power plant when it breaks because it broke down. They want to put these everywhere now. Well, there's too many people 60 and older. If you're 60 and older, then you're a worthless fucking piece of shit, right? According to the nuclear industry. Imagine that mentality. I'd say we killed their parents, but they'd be happy to get rid of them so they can liquidate their assets. That'd be great for them. They would love it. Fire at a control at Reactor 4. Well, officially, there's no fire. I know what you're saying. You're looking at the building, you're like, Dana, I'm pretty sure there was a fire. Like, no. The official word is there's no fucking fire. So don't say shit like that because that's wrong. Yeah, I know it looks like there was a fire. Okay, I know there's nothing left. But you can't say that because the nuclear industry said everything is perfect. Got all the fuel out of the fucking pool. Arnie Gunnarsson, Henry Caldecott, both of them told us. Everything is fine. Stop your fucking fear-mongering. Interview in Fukushima. A lot of police are dead. There's over 300. What year was that? 2016, I think it was. And these were the police officers that were stationed on accesses to communities that were abandoned because of perpetual radioactive fallout. And over 300 of them, the majority of them died from kidney failure. And plutonium and curium. Some nasty freaking stuff. When radiation workers die, they're marked as missing. They didn't come back and pick up their fucking check. Japan doctor. Tokyo should no longer be inhabited. 36 million people. Bless his heart for speaking out. Everyone is a victim of Fukushima. Well, that's true worldwide. Bleeding under the skin, urinary hemorrhaging. That sounds like a fucking vacation. Children's blood tests started changing last year. It's up to physicians to save our citizens and the future generations. Time is running short. Metropolitan Tokyo is 36 million people, and you can't get rid of the sewage because it's too radioactive. And we're talking about hundreds of thousands of one-ton bags a year. You can't get rid of sewage. That's dehydrated sewage, by the way. They evaporated the liquid, which is incredibly radioactive, back into the ecosystem, the despicable scum. You can't get rid of the sediment from the water filtration facilities. Try wrapping your mind around that statement. like 50,000 one-ton bags that a couple of cities wanted TEPCO to take possession of because the sediment from the water filtration was so radioactive they couldn't get rid of. So you're only going to capture about 1/1000th of the radiation in the water. So imagine how much poisoning you created. This is why this sewage is also so radioactive. You can't get rid of it. They can't get rid of the garbage because it's so radioactive. And when they do, they can't get rid of the ash because it's at 70, 80, 90,000 atoms of cesium only, of course, because that's all they acknowledge. 137. That is something that I should never be able to say. That should never exist. Those attributes should never be part of an equation. But I can tell you something right now. The bigger picture is much more frightening on top of it. Tokyo Professor couldn't help but feeling pity for the trees and the plants and the flowers. X-ray-like images shows the spread of radioactivity in all the plants and trees. It's equivalent to miscarriages, stillbirths, malformations. There's another professor. Cesium remains dispersed throughout the water column from the surface to the ocean floor. Well, if cesium is going to be doing it, so is uranium, plutonium, and americium, neptunium, strontium, which is... Curium is much more plentiful than any other isotope on top of that, and it needs lead shielding 20 times thicker. X-ray-like images shows how radioactivity is spread throughout the bodies of the wildlife. So if you X-ray the plants, they're full of radiation. If you X-ray the animals and the insects and birds, they're full of radiation. The radiation is dispersed from the ocean floor to the surface. It's from the ocean floor to the troposphere and everything in between. I mean, like, people gravitate to crime shows, right? You know, the serial killer was creeping around at night and they get fucking millions of views. Creepy shit, right? Try to name something fucking more creepier than nuclear. I should change my site to crime scene detective or crime scene investigator. We're going to be looking at the nuclear industry tonight. The serial killers, that makes all serial killers look like fucking schoolyard bullies. Fukushima radiation still circling the globe, 2012. The levels consistently, look up the word consistently, rise and fall in a 40-day cycle. Mommy, can we go play in the radioactive fallout? There's something you never heard kids say. Radioactive pollen. So you got radioactive sewage, you can't get rid of it. You got radioactive sediment from water filtration facilities, you can't get rid of. You got radioactive ash you can't get rid of. Radioactive garbage you can't get rid of. You got radioactive fucking pollen. Jeez. And so what's the most important creature on the planet is the pollinators, right? The moths, the bees, the pollinators. What's the worst thing you can do to the pollinators? Create radioactive pollen, Dana. Nothing says batshit fucking crazy like nuclear, though, does it? Fukushima plume model shows 1 million atoms a kilogram or a square meter over the west coast after the reactor's explosion. The UC Berkeley told everybody, no, there's no plume. UC Berkeley, man. UC Berkeley was like some kind of demented nightmare. And a friend of mine, her uncle was a professor at UC Berkeley. A friend of mine's wife, her husband. And so anyway, I was talking to her husband about it, and she came home from work. And she said, well, I'm going to contact my uncle. He's at UC Berkeley, he's a professor. And he said there was no radioactive fallout. She showed me the message. There's nothing to worry about, honey. There is no radioactive fallout, he said. Don't listen to Dana. Just give me a second, see if I can find Berkeley. Oh, Berkeley. You crazy critter, you. I got a folder on them, I just don't. Oh. No, I don't know if I got a few folders on them, unfortunately. I don't think I'm going to get lucky enough. Oh, we are safe. Just give nuclear a chance. There once was a nuclear. Nuclear is such a disgusting industry. What cracks me up is the cowardliness of the nuclear industry. You see, Berkeley Professor claims no matter what happens in Fukushima, not going to be a problem over here. Any kind of release in Japan would be non-detectable here. The pollution from the Asian countries, from the automobile, the industrial industries, adds to the index in California for several months, to the pollution indexes. Those particles are tens of thousands of times bigger than the radiation fallout. So if they can make it over, the radiation fallout could clearly make it over, right? But and if they so much of it that it adds to the industrial index, pollution index of California, for instance, then it's clearly going to be an issue. But it turned out way worse than anybody would have ever dreamt. And so every time I see the French government's model of how the radioactive, they're talking about 10 million atoms of cesium-137 in that plume you're looking at. And this model is only based on 15 days or 16 days, I think. This is the French government. 10 million atoms a square meter, or cubic meter of air, of cesium-137. Each atom pulses 600 feet every second, almost at the speed of light. See, no matter how insignificant you might think of it, anything that can pulse energy at the speed of light is going to wreck your chromosomes, your DNA, your cells of every species. Plants, flora, fauna, insects, you name it. It's going to wreck it. And that's going to break the food chain. But it was so much worse. Because we had 70 years of pollution, 68 years or something at that time of pollution from the nuclear industry, of lethal pollution. Radioactive fallout, I should call it. Give it the prominence it deserves. And when Fukushima happened, this was a pulse event that was equal to about 4,000 Chernobyls. Because you're talking about pure uranium, pure plutonium versus graphite. And then Medusa, Reactor 3 at Fukushima, was a plutonium mixed oxide reactor. And that the emissions from the reactors, these emissions we're talking about, are 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. 2 billion times more toxic to industrial poison. So how bad is industrial poison for your children or your family's children or your brother and sister's children or your... I want you to think that way for 1 second. Then I want you to think about, then how bad would it be for insects? How bad would it be for birds and stuff like that? How bad would it be for the phytoplankton, the basis of the food chain, the oxygen chain, the carbon sequestering chain? Rain with 20 million particles. We're talking particles. And Chris Sartosha in the Fraser University in British Columbia, Vancouver, he also announced at the end of that presentation that he got $6 million from the nuclear industry to make isotopes to go in human bodies for hospitals, which is the quickest way to get killed. Radiation health specialist, children with over 11 atoms a kilogram of cesium, and he downplayed it, right? Radiation health specialist, and I'm at the University, Fraser University in Vancouver, but particles are much worse than the atoms. they're brutal, right? They're hot. We call them hot particles for a reason. The particles are very hot. And just one of them will fuck up your child or your friends or yourself or your loved ones or your pets or any species on the planet. We're all interconnected, and that's something we should be proud of. Radiation health specialist, well, we used to be, but we can't be anymore. Radiation and health specialists, children with 11 atoms a kilogram start to see heart problems. Because you can put 200 million atoms on the head of a needle, you can't see it. So how fucking hard is it to see 11? My Geiger counter is clicking along at 158 there right now. And that's just gamma, right? Poison from Fukushima plant is spreading around the world, causing incalculable damage. This may never get under control. Oh no, you can't fucking put that genie back in the bottle. Back to the stories for tonight. Italy's prime minister plans to restart Italy's nuclear program, but widespread skepticism remains a roadblock. Italy had a major nuclear, after Chernobyl, they shut it down. You know what they done with their nuclear waste? They took it to Africa and dumped it under continental shelf or under coastlines. In the dark of the night, they gave it to the mobsters, the mob, the mafia. The mafia put it on derelict container or freighters or fishing vessels and brought it out and dumped it or scuttled the ships along Africa's coastline. And that's why you have so much piracy out there, because they killed the fishing industry. But thinking about the level of evilness to do something like that. And now Italy, because people got a short fucking memory. Skepticism among the people remains a roadblock the government would need to overcome. Well, they'll just go ahead and fucking do it if they want to. And then the arrogance to put in reducing carbon emissions. I don't understand why the world doesn't fight back. We can win this battle. We can hold them accountable, and by proxy then we'll create the knowledge that we need to deal with everything they've done to us for 80 years. Because there is a lot we can deal with, right? There's 80 years of dumping it into the ocean, but there was 30 years where it was absurd what they done. Many different countries too. I get offended whenever I hear the word carbon, using nuclear to reduce carbon emissions. It offends me because it's such a it's such a dishonest statement, right? First off, every nuclear power plant needs 2 gas, oil, and coal plants to run it every day. Dedicated to build it, to run it, needs 2 of them, right? Large ones. The whole friggin' thing is so corrupt. It's just... Bear with me. Here's one cracks me up. This is Hinkley Point C. This is carbon free. This is what they call carbon free. They're using more cement, enough cement. The whole story is, it's insane, right? Every time we have this conversation. like it's hard to comprehend that you actually can't see a person in this picture because of the size of it. And think about how much energy it takes to do everything you're seeing there, because that's they need 2 gas and oil and coal plants dedicated for 15 years just to build it for its lifespan, and then typically for 50 to 60 years later until because normally you wouldn't decommission these, try to decommission it for 50 years or so. But now, because they just don't care anymore, post-Fukushima, turn to nuclear energy. Following the Chernobyl disaster in 1986, public gripped by fear of a similar tragedy and skepticism of nuclear energy skyrocketed. They had 4 reactors. They all, following a referendum in which the people voted against it, it was shut down and has not been restarted since, despite attempts. And the nuclear will never stop trying. They said nuclear energy should produce at least 11% of Italy's electricity by 2050. So they're saying they're just going to go ahead and do it. That's what that statement means, right? Should. But why would you when you have geothermal? Remember, Italy dumped all their nuclear waste off the coastlines of impoverished countries, and particularly Africa. A smooth ride to the future of nuclear. Ho-ho! This is Idaho National Laboratory, better known as the destroyer of life. The advanced nuclear reactors isn't a straight line. The path to deploying advanced nuclear reactors, which is just the so-called small modular reactor, which is one of the most craziest scams we've seen for the nuclear industry, and there's no shortage of it, scams, but this is one of the best ones we've seen. A new supercomputer named Bitterroot, being installed at the Idaho National Laboratories, is helping to speed the journey through improved access to modeling. Here's some of the nuclear scientists from there. This is Mr. Bitterroot himself, I believe. High-performance computing allows engineers and scientists, degenerates / engineers and scientists, to model a wide variety of complex variables before construction, such as how steel or concrete degrades over time and what byproducts build up in the nuclear fuel. The degrading they're talking about is the Wigner effect. The neutron bombardment destroys the integrity of these high-pressure systems. These are usually 1,000, 2,000 pounds per square inch. Bitterroot is the name of Idaho mountain range and continues Idaho's National Laboratory's tradition of naming its high-performance computers after Idaho landmarks. Because a lot of people are patriotic about their area. They're emotionally attached, and they're spiritually attached to where they're born by the water. Because the water where you were born is the minerals that your body's made up of. So you are connected to the water that your parents drank and produced the genetics of you. Right? So you are connected. That water is very special to your health. By adding an additional 43,000 computer processing cores with faster chips and a new capability, high bandwidth memory, 43,000 computers. But see, the problem with the nuclear industry is incredible education, but there's a disconnect in these people. They're missing that human emotion. They don't have empathy. And that doesn't mean you can't get a great education, an amazing education, amazing degrees. But what you do as a human, you have to have all the emotions to make it work. See? And this is why the industry hasn't come up with anything new since 1904 or so. All the designs they're using are based upon other people's designs. They haven't come up with nothing new. And then they artificially came up with this, oh, we're going to create this, because people don't want large nuclear reactors. Maybe we'll do the small modular reactor narrative. And so they had all the money in the world, all the public relation firms that are missing empathy. All of them, right? And they only attract people that are missing some of their DNA. And so they can't come up with solutions. They can't come up with new technology because they're missing the essential ingredients. That's my take, is these people are dysfunctional because they don't have empathy. It's because there's a disconnect. And so they can't see life properly, and so they can't come up with the right solutions. They come up with solutions, but they're not the right solutions. We're seeing this symmetrically for so long. That's the only thing that I know that would make sense. Because we know they don't have empathy for anything or anybody. You can't get a job in the nuclear industry if you give a shit about stuff. You can only care about nuclear, and that's only going to be superficial. There's nobody in the nuclear industry that the world is familiar with. There's nobody in the world him or her is a pretty cool person. I like them. They're pretty nice people. Their spokespeople, the people that you put on a pedestal are people like Elon Musk or Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos, right? Which is a complete disconnect from the nuclear industry. But there's nobody in the nuclear industry that people gravitate to because they don't have that charisma. They're not capable of it because they're missing that emotion, the empathy side, right? They don't have this moment of clarity in their heads. They have this fixation. And a lot of them have autism is what we see in the nuclear industry. And that's the people that they gravitate to because it's not that they're looking for team players, they're looking for followers. They don't want anybody that's assertive, anybody that takes charge, because that scares them. And everything is scripted for the nuclear industry. And that's why it attracts those types of people. The disconnect is so real. It's so real. So they provide a lump sum compensation and medical benefits to current and former nuclear workers whose illness is the result of working in the nuclear weapons industry. The Energy Employees Occupational Illness Compensation Program is different from RECA. And RECA expired, but this one didn't. And before they updated, claimant could only establish beryllium sensitivity by presenting one abnormal. So they're only looking at a couple of diseases. They weren't looking at the reality, the thousands of illnesses from this kind of poisoning. They were Pacific only, and the reason was they paid out more than $26 billion in compensation, but their margin of facts of truth for illnesses is about 1% of the illnesses. It's probably not even that. Because if they paid out the full to everybody that did get sick, it would be everybody. And he paid out $26 billion. Dirty, 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 disgusting industry. And here's one of their lead nuclear scientists right here. They call her Big Mouth, right? Officers in Houthi Ansar Allah militia, in an interview with Al Jazeera, A year from now, we'll have missiles that can threaten Europe, U.S. nuclear targets. Yeah, but who are they going to attack? Who are they really going to attack, right? Yeah, I know they just blew up an oil tanker. Yesterday, was it, I think? The Americans or the British or somebody will go in and just blow up everything for a couple of years. What would a full-scale nuclear exchange look like in reality? It is truly global Armageddon? And would it be survivable for some peoples and places? The Auditor by Art Bessana. I just really, really dislike him. I dislike him. He's a weasel, eh? What would a full-scale nuclear exchange look like in reality? We've already had full-scale nuclear exchanges. It was called weapons testing. And the radioactive fallout is the same whether it's a test or a war. It doesn't care if it's a war. It's the same radioactive fallout. And so the Soviet Union detonated a single bomb was equal to 3,800 Nagasaki bombs going off at the one time. If that's not a nuclear war, what the fuck is? Like, seriously, if that's not a nuclear war, what actually is? Although Donald Trump possesses some flaws, as we all do, his legacy qualifies him for the Nobel Peace Prize. And many scholars have posited that a global thermonuclear war with a Cold War era stockpile, even with a current smaller stockpile, may lead to a human extinction. So then the question is, we set off, the Soviet Union set off a thermonuclear weapon was equal to 3,800 Nagasaki's. The Castle Bravo was equal to 1,000 Nagasaki's. It's almost 5,000 Nagasaki bombs. But it took a Fukushima to really set us on the path to extinction, right? But the cancer epidemic started in the 70s after a couple of decades of nuclear weapons. It manifested, rather, in the 70s. It was very evident there was a cancer epidemic. When pre-nuclear, there was no cancer epidemics. Cancer was a very, like, when I was like, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 years old, there was a kid way down the coastline who had cancer. And doctors came from all over the world to see the kid because it was so rare to see a kid with cancer. And now every single street, sometimes every house, has a kid with cancer. And it's not from eating pizzas. Well, maybe, if you got mushrooms on it. Nuclear waste atomic bomb, atomic testing on tap for Nevada in Project 2025 manifesto. Well, every administration has a manifesto, right? They hire 6,000 new people. They like the last administration in Taiwan was, and South Korea, was to get rid of nuclear power plants. The new administration comes in, they want to produce more nuclear power plants, so you change everything, and then 4 years later, the next party comes in and redacts everything, and you spend your whole life fighting for a future for your loved ones, or for your planet, or for the species. And this is not an accident. This is to keep you divided. So nuclear waste, of course nuclear waste got to be on tap. You got 80 years, and all you ever done with nuclear waste is throw it in landfills and in estuaries and streams and rivers and oceans. Everything is vented into the ecosystem on top of that from all the fuel pools. And the nuclear weapons... fear mongering, see? They want you in the closet with the lights off and a flashlight up in your face, sucking on your thumb. According to both the scientific community and the global experience, deep geological storage is critical. According to both the scientific community, the controlled scientific community, and what do you mean global experience? You haven't even tried to come up with a solution. And deep geological storage, which doesn't exist, is critical to any plan for proper disposal of 75 years of defense waste, which is quite because for 75 years you let it sit in the open, splitting atoms into the ecosystem, you scumbags. And then 80 tons of commercial spent nuclear fuel. But like Hanford, all the national laboratories are crime scenes. But Hanford in particular, in the United States, acknowledged that they dumped during the Manhattan Project high-level waste. They dumped 450 billion gallons of high-level waste, and that waste is splitting atoms. And that's equal, because they like to say with all nuclear waste in a swimming pool, an Olympic-sized swimming pool, right? But you can't, because it'll detonate immediately and you'll lose the planet right away. But they dumped 450 billion gallons into the soil just in one short period at Hanford. That's equal to a 6-foot wide aquarium. And we're talking about if you took a gallon of it and put it at an airport, everybody walked past it will die that day for 1,000,000 years kind of material. 450 billion gallons is equal to a 6-foot wide aquarium, 518 feet tall, wrapped around the entire planet more than once into unlined trenches. They also have 41 miles of unlined trenches they dump nuclear waste to at Hanford. But imagine a wall of nuclear waste, 518 feet tall, wrapped around the entire planet from just a single fucking place. And you tell me that this industry has any rights whatsoever. It doesn't have a fucking right. And everybody in it should be arrested. And then people should be trained to deal with it. It's the most despicable thing in history is the nuclear industry. They're disgusting, sadistic, genocidal, omnicidal idiots. Project 2025 says the government is holding $46 billion in utility and ratepayers' funds designated for a permanent disposal site. Again, we've seen this number a lot of times over the last number of years. And it never changed. So if you got $46 billion, you're probably going to get $1 billion interest every year. If you invest it wisely, you can probably double that every year. Where's that money to? 'Cause don't think for a second they're not growing interest on it. Because the minute that they take the money and use it for some kind of repository is the minute they have to stop that money train. Because this is an incredible money train that they got. That they spent $20 billion on litigation for Yucca Mountain. $20 billion. That's just one of the many different money dumps from Yucca Mountain. $20 billion on litigation. It's all about the money, right? 90% of the money is stolen through administration. They will kill everything on the planet to keep that money train, that bottomless, endless money train pit. U.S. and the Philippines civil nuclear agreement enters into force. This is a nuclear plant 1986 was finished in the Philippines, and then Chernobyl happened, and so they decided not to go ahead with it, which was the moral and ethical thing to do. So they never did fire it up. Because the minute you fire up a nuclear plant and you take a year later take some fuel out of the reactor core and put it in a pool, Now you're splitting atoms into the ecosystem forever. And you never stop adding to the pool each year. So every year there's more and more radiation coming out of these disease factories. This is why we call it a comedy show. The United States Department and Agreement for Cooperation and Peaceful Uses of Nuclear Energy with the Philippines is taking effect on the 2nd of July. The agreement will enhance our cooperation on clean energy. Like, how can you call nuclear clean? Every facet of nuclear, all the way to the fuel, is a nightmare. Once it goes through the chain reaction, you put it in the pool, it's a nightmare for 1 billion years to everything with replicating cells. But that's what they do. They put people in positions of power in the countries. They support them. They sabotage the opposition. In fact, you can go back and look at the history of what they used to do. Back in the day, they would set up printing factories in countries they opposed, and the parties that they wanted in the power, they would have printing factories going out printing up laws about the opposition players and going out and dropping them off everywhere, putting them on fence posts and telephone poles. And it was just propaganda meant to take down the other party. It was very effective. And then when they get people that they wanted in positions of power, and because they're very thoughtful, because it's very subtle, see? And then they're very well supported. Although the plan was completed, it was almost immediately mothballed in the wake of the Chernobyl, after questions were raised about its excessive costs and poor safety. It's located on a fault line on top of that, a major fault. And we just seen the Noto Peninsula Japan fault line in January the 1st that was 3,000 to 4,000 years old rupture. That was absurd. This is fun, eh? $13 billion for a joint target. That's the proper way to look at an aircraft carrier. There's two different ways I look at an aircraft carrier. They're a big, stupid, dirty bomb, and they shoot a lot of dirty bombs. The USS General R. Ford is the most expensive warship ever built at $13 billion. How many suicide bombers does it take to equal one of these bad boys? 100,000, 200,000, 1 million suicide bombers will equal one of these, maybe? A couple of million? I fucking hate these pictures. They stand there with their life jackets on, of all things, with their hands behind their back, their chest out, stomach in, their shoulders back, their chin up. And these are just slaughter machines. These are genocide machines. And the pollution they live in countries is unbelievable. It's unbelievable what they do to a country with these weapons. And they use a lot of dirty bombs, depleted uranium and low-level radioactive materials. But how many suicide bombers does it take to equal one of these fucking stupid machines? These idiot machines. Fucking zombies. 5,000 zombies on these things. Yeah, I remember I went to join the military when I was really young, right? My buddy had joined it. And I was stood up there was a long line of guys. It was like 3 days, right? You're staying there in the city for 3 days. There was a long line of people in the doctor's examination room, and everybody was in their underwear. So I fucking hated it right there and then. And then this doctor was sat on an old hardback chair, and you get up in front of him until you drop your pants, and then turn your head to the left, and he grab you by the testicles and tell you to cough. And I was saying to myself, how the fuck do I get out of this, right? Because I'm passing everything, and I don't want to pass. All of a sudden, I want out. And so then you had to go see a psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist says to me, everything looks great, Dana. You're a shoo-in, man. He said, "Would you got some simple questions for you? Have you ever smoked, Mary Jane or anything like that?" And I realized, oh shit, there's my opportunity, right? Oh fuck yeah, all the time, man. He's like, "No, don't say that." Like, "No, I smoke it all the fucking time. I got roaches here in my pocket." He's like, "No, don't say that." And he said, "When was the last time you smoked it, Dana?" And I said, "Fuck, about 45 minutes ago or something." Still got roaches in my pocket. Of course, this wasn't true. And he said, "Okay, well, come back in 9 months, Dana, and try again." I said, "Not a fucking chance, buddy. Not a chance." And my older brother wanted me to join the French Foreign Legion and become a fucking mass murderer. I said, "Why don't you go fucking join the French Foreign Legion?" And it could cost billions of dollars to scrap these genocide machines. Again, how many suicide bombers does it take to equal one of those jet fighters? Let alone the lifespan of these stupid misery machines. This is a good story, you know. The mind has no firewall. Everybody should read that story. I found it on the Internet Archive. The mind has no firewall, and the industry knows it. And so they've spent who knows how much, hundreds of billions of dollars trying to fuck you up because you don't have a way of filtering it out. Your children don't, your friends don't. And that's why Spider-Man and the Hulk are so insidious, right? It is completely clear that the state which is first to create a mind weapon will achieve incomparable superiority. There's many ways you can attack them, right? Chemically, through the water, like they're already doing. Radiate your water. Water is your most important asset. But it's your most important. Water is life. Without water, we don't exist. And so fundamentally, water is God. And attributes of water, sometimes you got to wonder, is that God? Is that where God is too? If there's a God, is God water? Because water goes through your body, it has your memories. It has access to everything on this planet, every memory of everything. And people say, is God up there listening to me right now? But if God is water, then he's listening to you right now because you're mostly water, right? And you're going to go pee water later on, and water ends up in the big system. You see what I'm saying, though, right? Like, we're all connected by water. Just everybody in your country, when the humidex rises up, we're all connected with this water. This water is so special. I just love everything about water. Landowners like Ignis, this is Ontario, Canada, where they're allegedly going to put a deep geological repository, right? Nuclear decision. Landowners. Not landowners, but a landowner. John Saunders is happy to see the township of Ignis continue as a potential host community. He's happy. Think about that statement later. Even though the waste would be kept near his summer home. His summer home, which is like 100 acres. So who the fuck is this guy anyway? He said, "I base my findings here on facts presented by the Nuclear Waste Management Organization, which is the industry." So clearly he's connected somewhere. But the Nuclear Waste Management Organization is not going to give you facts. It's going to be social engineering. If it gives you facts, you're going to fucking tell them get lost. And nuclear, as we already know, they're perpetual liars. They're just filthy, disgusting liars. That's all we ever see from the Nuclear Waste Management Organization. And I respect their technical findings. So no other narrative is permitted. He's just basing everything upon a one-sided story. So he's literally fucking stupid, right? You got to look at all the different evidence. And this is a government agency. You can't base your findings up on a government agency. Someone's going to give you yin and yang, left and right, up and down, straight and forward, backwards, sideways. Their technical findings convinced me the area would be a good place for their project. Whoever this is, he comes there every summer. This is his summer home. And he brings his 2 daughters with him for the storage of used nuclear fuel. Well, it's only 3% used. The other 90% of the radioactivity is still in the fuel. This is a disgusting industry. Every time you look at the nuclear industry, and the Nuclear Waste Management Organization is the industry. And they've had $26 billion for 22 years. And they haven't got a single cent of interest growed on it. $26 billion all this time. All that money is just siphoned off. And if you start spending the money, then you won't be able to siphon off the money no more. And one of the locations near Lake Huron, which is part of the Great Lakes, which is one of the polls we got tonight, actually, is about the Great Lakes. Lake Huron is one of them. Was building nuclear plants and nuclear dumps by the Great Lakes meant to poison millions through drinking and farming. Well, clearly. Clearly. La 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 la. Yippee-ki-yay. Nuclear, such a scumbag. Big censorship tonight for some reason. Inside Chernobyl with Ben Fogel. That's rich, isn't it? He's going to take you into the nuclear wasteland. He's not going to go to the orphanages where all the victims are to. And the money that he spent going there, he could take down to these orphanages and change these victims' lives forever. Oh, Ben's not going down there. He's inside Chernobyl with that channel shit for the brains. Years after the world's most devastating nuclear accident. How the fuck can Chernobyl be worse than Fukushima? How does that work? Chernobyl's not even equal to the reactor core, let alone the fuel pools at Fukushima. Chernobyl's a graphite reactor, a brand new reactor, was only a couple of years old. These reactors were 40 years old. The reactor cores are pure uranium, pure plutonium. They're at the top of the building, and above that was 4 decades of reactor cores, and the fuel pools around 9 reactor cores per building, 10 reactor cores per building. How can Ford buildings having those attributes and losing their entire inventories not be worse than Chernobyl? So strike 2 for Benny Boy. And then the worst nuclear accident. Now Chernobyl, every nuclear accident is the worst nuclear accident in many ways. Chernobyl's terrible. That's a fact, right? I mean, but it's not 1/4000th of a Fukushima. But it's terrible. I'll show you some stuff about it. The influence of post-Chernobyl followed on birth defects, abortion rates in Austria, prenatal loss of 400 male fetuses in the Czech Republic. Legally induced abortions in Denmark after Chernobyl. These are all very far away. Pregnancy outcome in Finland after Chernobyl. What are you doing studies like that for? Chernobyl cover-up. Down syndrome time clusterings, because Down syndrome and autism are the first studies they're going to start producing. Down syndrome in Scotland, not just Belarus. The Large Hadron Colliding new discoveries provide a crucial clue to reveal the deepest layers of quarks, eluding previous assumptions and casting doubt on the nature of Earth's gravitational pull. Yeah, but when they opened up the Large Hadron Collider, they had a big celebration. It was an absurd amount of money spent. And it was the devil worshipping. It was like they were celebrating the possibility of opening a different dimension or something. And then there's a lot of evidence to suggest that's what it was built for. To tap into something that, what they're telling you is completely different than what they actually built it for, is what I'm trying to say. Quarks are the fundamental building blocks of visible matter. And baryons, which are essentially protons and neutrons, are believed to have formed in the early universe and make up all visible matter. But this is stuff they knew without the Large Hadron Collider, right? Trump's VP pick. This is hilarious. His comment last week, the UK could become the first truly Islamic country with nuclear weapons. It's true. This is what we're seeing in the United Kingdom, Ireland, and Scotland. The invaders have taken over the country, brought in by UN by the looks of it. Senator J.D. Vance has claimed that the UK could be the first truly Islamic country with nuclear weapons, was widely rejected by UK politicians, including the new Deputy Prime Minister. Well, just because they rejected it don't mean it's not fucking true. Because if you ask anybody else that's paying attention, they're going to tell you, yeah, that's probably true. Clearly, that's who's winning the votes now, is those politicians from Muslim countries. Nuclear reactor taken offline in Georgia due to valve issues. Look over here, don't look over there. Headline is 14 years behind schedule. It was 4 times the original price, and they're still far, far away from getting the kinks out of it. And they fired it up, and that could have melted down. Too much pressure can kill a planet, see? A single Fukushima can destroy a country and a planet. Japan nuclear regulators urged TEPCO to prevent further accidents. Yeah, but TEPCO can't make money by doing that. TEPCO's not a nuclear authority. They're a corporation. And nobody can go to jail if they fuck up because they're on the stock markets. You can't hold them accountable. We don't have the regulatory agencies for fucking rubber stamping. We have them to protect us from these monsters. No, it's up to them. We want Tokyo, TEPCO, the people that fucked over the entire planet for 13 years straight, to prevent problems and security lapses. Oh, okay. The power station suffered, and we see that word showing up a lot lately, isn't it? Suffered a triple meltdown. Not a triple nuclear meltdown, a triple nuclear reactor meltdown, get the prominence it deserves. No. A triple meltdown, it means nothing to the average person, see? And then you'll always see that connotation due to the earthquake and tsunami. That's always going to be there. The nuclear industry is perfect. If it wasn't for all the accidents of other reasons, it would never have an issue. If there was no humans on the planet, it would never have an issue. If there was no weather events on the planet, nuclear would never have an issue. Problem is, it has an issue everywhere you look. One issue was the operation of the fire alarm at a waste incineration facility in February. They actually built, we covered it a few months ago, 19 incinerators in Fukushima Prefecture for burning nuclear waste. They built 90, and these are large buildings, massive, and then they're going to tear them down. But decommissioning was a big deal because they're so radioactive. And you can't destroy radiation by incinerating it. Not that anybody gives a fuck. So TEPCO's in charge. That's every reason you'll ever need to hate the nuclear industry, right there. They left TEPCO in charge. Electricity imports to hit record in 2024 in the United Kingdom, warns the Nuclear Industry Lobbyist Group. Nuclear Industry Lobbying Group. The Nuclear Industry Association, why are they being quoted, I wonder? It says 10 million homes depend on power from France. Oh, France is 70-something% nuclear, right? Such a stupid picture, eh? Achieve net zero. Hinkley Point. With the most resource-intensive fucking material on the planet. And the paper, the net zero paper, that was written by Miles Allen. He got a cushy job at Cambridge now. The UK is on course to import a record amount of electricity this year with the amount of power needed from abroad, enough to keep the lights on in around 10 million homes. Imports represented almost a fifth of the UK supply in June. Like, first off, you got all this fucking money you're collecting, right, to build new plants. You got you got this whole fucking industry dependent upon, and the government, that's all they cover is power, right? And you mean to tell me, again, we see this over and over and over, that they have the authority, they have the monetary, they are fleecing the ratepayers. They have this enormous amount of money just sitting there, and they can't get something up and run before the rest of the power fucking runs out, expires, or lives his lifespan. How is that even possible? What kind of incompetence is that, really? Because that should never happen. They have the ability, and they could replace everything with geothermal. They have the ability to do it all. They won't do it. No, well, no, we're waiting for small modular reactors to show up, Dana. They're going to show up sometime in the next 50 or 100 fucking years, Dana. And then who's laughing then, Dana? Who's laughing then, right? That's their attitude, you know. I know what you're saying. It's the nuclear industry. You're allowed to be stupid. Public inquiry hears at least 5 undercover officers spied on the anti-nuclear movement. 5! I got more than that on me every fucking day. One undercover officer said she was told by Superior Margaret Thatcher wanted to know what the anti-nuclear chaps and chapses was doing. And they took spying to a whole different level. Like, they were walking around with signs. And one was sent to infiltrate the women's peace camp at Greenham Commons after she was told by a superior that the Prime Minister wanted to know. So go ahead and be a piece of shit. The reports gathered by the undercover police officer were routinely passed to MI5, which then passed it on to the media to demonize the anti-nuclear, which was mounting an extensive surveillance of the anti-nuclear campaigners. Extensive surveillance. There was 139 undercover officers spied on 1,000, more than 1,000 mainly groups. 1,000 groups since 1968. 1,000 groups. And the cops, they're the same cops should have been arresting people in the nuclear industry. If they'd done that, they wouldn't have all these anti-nuclear campaigners, would they? One of his tasks is that, so they should be convicted for not doing their job, shouldn't they? Instead of spying on the people that they were being harmed, they should have spied on the fuckers that were harming them. one of his tasks is to look at why the anti-nuclear campaigners were spied on and whether the surveillance was justified. So they had all this effort and energy to spy on the victims, but they didn't spy on the people that were creating the victims. Well, they did, but that was a different section. And that was just to make sure they were being good government employees. Being good, stupid, genocidal employees. The extent of the infiltration was truly shocking, completely unjustified, and anti-democratic. Margaret Thatcher greeting a fashion designer wearing a t-shirt with an anti-nuclear protest message. And then she got hundreds and hundreds of police out spying on the actual protesters. Thatcher's government argued the surveillance was necessary because the anti-nuclear chaps and chappas allegedly controlled or influenced by communists and subversive. A claim made by the 1985 MI5 had concluded to be largely unfounded. And that the Thatcher's government set up a special unit within the Ministry of Defense. This is the nuclear industry every step of the way, folks. It wasn't Thatcher's government. This was the nuclear industry. It doesn't matter which administration. It's the same scumbags every time. They drew on information been collected by MI5 and undercover officers. That information was in turn passed on to the media to discredit anti-nuclear. And there was tens of thousands of women surrounded this one place, this weapons site, and just sat there holding hands, the criminals, eh? The British are such fucking scumbags, the governments and the pro-nuclear community. They really are just degenerates. They're the worst thing can happen to a country is those types of people. And they were infiltrated between 83 and 86 by an undercover officer who used the fake name of Lee Bosser. Owned by women who camped outside the Greenham Common Air Base in Berkshire. There's 30-something thousand of them that I remember, but it could be many, many more than that. I could be wrong. Jack Black puts Tenacious D on hold after a bandmate's Trump shooting comment. This was disgusting, eh? Jack Black continued with the concert following these comments, but has now put out a statement. I was blindsided by what was said at the show on Sunday. I would never condone hate speech or encourage political violence in any form. And after much reflection, I no longer feel it's appropriate to continue the Tenacious D tour, which is his band, I guess. And all future creative plans are on hold. I am grateful to the fans for their support and understanding. And Tenacious D, they've been around for 30 years or something. They had four more dates across Australia before traveling to New Zealand. An Australian senator, Ralph Babbitt, had called for the band to be removed from the country. He said, I call on the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese to join me in denouncing Tenacious D, Jack Black, and band member Kyle Gass. And I call on the Immigration Minister Andrew Gills to revoke their visas and deport them immediately. And that anything less than a deportation is an endorsement of the shooting and the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. And did you see, people went out and asked the pro-Biden communities, and they all said, no, this was all faked by Donald Trump so that he would get sympathy. It was completely irrational, right? I'm sure there's some people out there didn't say that kind of stuff, but there was an awful lot of them were trying to justify it that way. I was pretty shocked by that. Tenacious D Australia tour, date postponed after comments about Trump. There's Jack, and there's Kyle Gass over there. was really something, eh? What he done. Video from the event shows gas being presented with a birthday cake and told to make a wish as he blew out the candles. He then appeared to say, "Don't miss Trump next time," just hours after the shooting in Pennsylvania. One person dead, 2 more critically wounded. And a musician is supposed to be somebody with compassion, right? But they jump on these bandwagons, political bandwagons. Blackett publicly criticized Trump previously and recently appeared at a fundraiser for Joe Biden, a celebrity fundraiser. How the fuck can somebody be a celebrity because they played in a shitty fucking movie? Like, what are you talking about? So if they show up on TV or in Hollywood, I'm supposed to fucking worship them? Give your fucking head a shake, boy. They're the very last people I'll ever fucking worship. They're just actors. They don't even write the fucking stories, for Christ's sakes. You got 200 people. Without the 200 people helping them, they wouldn't even fucking exist. Degenerate, despicable, disgusting U.S. scientist decode a 125-year-old element to boost a cancer treatment. Like radiation, like there's nothing on the planet has an autoimmune trigger to defend against man-made radiation. Your body attacks it for the rest of your life with white blood cells. That can't fucking cure anything. And then after 80 years of trying to do this, they still haven't managed to cure a single fucking dog or a mouse or anything else. And you take your loved ones to the hospital and let them murder your children and your friends and your families with radiation. What the fuck is wrong with you people? You've been well brainwashed by a very naughty, disgusting industry that hates you and everything that has replicating cells, and is very busy, very methodical at exterminating everybody and their future. At what point do we make a step, right? At what point do we try to have a future? At what point do the species matter, I wonder? Big censorship tonight. Holy fuck. Holy shitarooey. Let me see what we're doing here. We just ran out of stories. So burnt out. Yeah, I've been unbelievably sick this week. Come around a bit today. I had to go lie down for a couple of hours this evening. I didn't want to get up either, right? And I had to turn the air conditioning off last night because you can hear it here. And same thing tonight. It was 78 degrees when I come into the studio last night. I would imagine it's probably going to be the same thing tonight. Okay. I don't care about the censorship because the story has to be told, right? And it's a very important story, people can't always appreciate, but I mean, this is an extinction event. This is some of the research expeditions that we've done. We've extensive research from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska. Let's go back to the Great Lakes for 1 second, to the pole. So, this is the Great Lakes, and we got a poll tonight asking that question about the Great Lakes. Was building nuclear power plant and nuclear dumps by the Great Lakes meant to poison millions and tens and hundreds of millions of people through drinking and farms, and you ship the food worldwide? And how the fuck do we get... Look, we got somebody else just voted no. So somebody's out there spamming me. Ah, bless your hearts. You must feel really important, eh? That's your job, is to spam me. Have we got another... Do we get 29%? 30%? Let's hang on and see if the troll shows up and spam me one more time. That's what they're up to, eh? They're trying to influence people. But look at the evidence. We'll come back to this. So we're at 28%. Let's see if it changes in the next little tiny bit. So Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, Lake Huron, Lake Michigan, Lake Superior. These are all radioactive fallout alone will destroy these lakes. And this is the biggest aquifer on the entire fucking planet. I swear a lot lately, I noticed, don't I? Sue, so look at everything you see there is nuclear power, nuclear dumps. Even the Fermi plant had a nuclear meltdown on the Great Lakes, for goodness sakes. They covered it up successfully, mind you. But that didn't mitigate the fact that it happened. And nuclear dumps on the Great Lakes, West Valley Nuclear Waste Site. Even Niagara Falls got a nuclear waste site. Unbelievable. 9 Mile Point. And the accidents they had at some of these places, what the Canadians are doing to the Great Lakes is disgusting, by the way. It's disgusting, eh? Was building nuclear power plants. I'm waiting for the trolls to come back and spam no one more time. Like, because first off, the only time you've seen this happen is because they're looking at the IP addresses of who watching the video, and somebody out there is watching this and is saying to themselves that are in a position where they don't like and saying, "Holy shit, I didn't know this was going on." What you want to do, like what people should do, if you want to, you go back to each one of my videos and find the poll at the end of the video and expand it and take a screen capture of it and print it out. And then you got a book, like a fucking book of polls that tells the story of how evil nuclear is. Because we got a lot of polls over the years, don't we? Right? And that's the fact, isn't it? What have I got done to you here? Hang on. I guess the trolls got embarrassed. So why would 28 people say that? Because that's what's happening. When you look at the evidence, if you look at the evidence, they're surrounded by nuclear power plants, then what's happening? Right? It's clearly they're trying to poison everybody by doing that. And why come in and spam my poll like that? It's very unusual for for me to have that happen. They usually just stay away, right? So the fact that you see 28% said no, that's actual panic. Somebody in the nuclear industry is panicked because of that particular poll. And the only reason they're panicking is because you know somebody's IP address just woke up. Wake up the rest of the ways. And you're on the right path. You're on the right side of history. All right. Let's close the poll, I guess. Bless everybody except for the trolls. Take your hearts. Bless your hearts out there. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Tomorrow's Thursday. Another night of fucking madness, I'm sure. Nuclear industry doesn't take a break. I feel guilty if I don't do a show. And I always feel better when I do a show, even if I feel like shit, like I did yesterday and today. I still feel better when I finish the show. We'll see everybody, I guess, tomorrow night. Hugs for everybody. Have a great night tonight. Great day tomorrow. I apologize for not being up to speed this week. I was worried I was having a heart attack. Or something was going very seriously wrong inside of me. And I think it was just all the work I'd done on the weekend. And it was awkward work. I had a bunch of welding I had to get done on the truck. And it was like 4 hours and 20 minutes on my back. And I had built a cantilever to hold my body up and then the Hummer, it sits on 4, you know those drive-on ramps. I got 4 of them, so the Hummer is up about that much higher. And then I put a piece of plywood underneath it, and I get underneath it and weld. It took me 4 hours of welding and grinding anyway, and it just tore me up. Someone my age, my health should never have to do fucking stuff like that. It's not fear. I don't think it's fear that I have to hurt myself like that. The nuclear industry doesn't give me a break though, so I got no choice. I can't afford to do it, right? And so I got to do it on my own. And you know what it's like when you do it on your own? You're forced to take your fucking time, right? And it's gonna take me a few more days to recover, but it feels of it. But at least I'm doing pretty good tonight. Okay, I was just trying to kill a bit of time here. Yeah, we've done pretty good. Have a good night, folks. We'll see everybody tomorrow. Maybe you have a great day tomorrow. Thanks for everybody. Take care, folks.